So welcome to session number 12 of the 20th Annual Northwest Interlibrary Loan and Resource Sharing Conference. NWILL wishes to acknowledge that the territory called North America, now primarily occupied by descendants of European colonizers and other immigrants, is the rightful land of Indigenous, Native American, and First Nations populations. We are all responsible for understanding the history of colonization and genocide of Indigenous people, and must commit to learning, building relationships, sharing stories, and taking action to support Indigenous sovereignty, priorities, and actions. We encourage you to learn about the Indigenous peoples to whom the land you occupy rightfully belongs. Please visit the documents section of the conference platform to learn more. Today's date is Friday, September 3rd, 2021. This session is entitled Panel Discussion, Embracing Automation to Improve ILL Turnaround Time and Save Staff Time. It will be presented by Laura Barber, who's an ILL paraprofessional at St. Charles City County Library in Missouri. Amy Chu, Interlibrary Loan Librarian at Valdosta State University Library. Brandon Martin, who is my neighbor down the hall at NSU here in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma. He's an instructor of library services and our systems librarian. And Jenny Rosenfeld, who's a product analyst for resource sharing at OCLC. My name is Karl G. Siewert. My pronouns are they, them, and their, and I am the convener for this session. The session is being recorded with permission from the presenters. They retain the copyright to the information they are presenting and may request its removal from public viewing in the future by written request to the NWILL committee chairperson. However, at this time, it is planned that recordings will be available once captions have been added. Attendees will be notified when recordings are available. To turn live captioning on, click the CC link at the bottom of the screen and select Show Subtitle. If you have a question during the session, please use the Q&A function in Zoom, and I will pose those to the presenter verbally at the end of the presentation. Or since it's a panel discussion, I may bring them up as things go. The door prize keyword will be revealed between the presentation and the Q&A. Please see the door prize link in the Event Mobi menu. And when the Zoom webinar ends, please do complete the post-session survey in Event Mobi located at the bottom of the session page. On that note, I will turn the session over to our presenters.
Thanks, Karl, and thanks everyone for sticking around to the end of NWILL 21. This has been a great conference. I'm hoping that everyone else has enjoyed themselves as much as I have. And thank you for inviting us to talk today about automation. So I'm Jenny Rosenfeld. I'm a product analyst at OCLC and resource sharing. Before I came to OCLC, I worked in public and academic libraries for 12 years. And I was head of ILL at Woodbury University in Burbank, California, where my symbol was OMB, in case you ever requested from us. So in today's session, we'll start by letting our panelists introduce themselves. I'll talk a little bit about automation with Automated Request Manager, just to make sure that we're all on the same page with our definitions of automation. And then our panelists will share their library workflows, how they use automation and why, and how it's helped in their libraries. Then we'll spend a good amount of time debunking some myths about automation. At OCLC, as we talk about automation a lot, we hear some of the same objections to using it over and over again. Reasons why library staff think they shouldn't use it or can't use it, or that it's just not for libraries like theirs. So we're going to look at some of those concerns and talk about how to address them. And we can end with looking to the future of automation and beyond, and we should have plenty of time for Q&A, which you should add to chat as we go. So we'll get started with introducing our panelists. You can see their pictures here and on your screen. I will start with Laura and let her tell us a little bit about her library.
Hi, I work at St. Charles City County Library in Missouri. We currently have 11 library branches and serve a population of more than 400,000 residents. Our customers check out over 5 million items per year. And we do have some online resources, which unfortunately we can't interlibrary loan those. Our licenses don't let us do that. And we do have some information about our summer challenge. If you could, thank you. Okay, and my title is Interlibrary Loan Paraprofessional, and I did see there was a discussion group for all the parapros, so I appreciate whoever started that. for this conference. We use WorldShare ILL, and currently our staffing, I am full-time. I have 2 assistants that give me some part-time hours in my office, and then 2 or 3 assistants will kind of help process requests as needed out in the branches. Our average for last fiscal year was 825 borrowing and 313 lending per month, but that was when we had a limit of 5 requests per patron. And we have just gone back to unlimited ILL requesting. So I am seeing a huge uptick in requests now.
Thanks, Laura. How about you, Amy?
Hi, I'm Amy Chu. I am a faculty librarian at Valdosta State University, which is way down in South Georgia, pretty near the Florida-Georgia line. And it's hot. And my air is out in the building today, so if I look a little pink, that's why. But I serve the Gertrude Gilmer Odom Library at Valdosta State, and we're a medium to small size regional comprehensive university, and we have a little more than 11,000 students that we serve. So on average, we field about 700 to 800 requests per month. My position is half-time. I manage the ILL department, but I'm half ILL and I'm half a reference librarian. So I'm kind of pulled in multiple directions. But when we are fully staffed, we also have 2 full-time library technical assistants and 2 to 3 student workers. And we use Iliad to process our ILL requests.
Thanks, Amy. Brandon?
Hi, everyone. I'm Brandon Martin. I'm Instructor of Library Services here at Northeastern State University. And similar to Amy, I'm kind of a half systems librarian and half our ILL coordinator here at NSU. A little bit information about NSU. We have 3 physical campuses. Jenny, do you want to go to the next one? We have 3 physical campuses, plus online students. We're a medium-sized, medium to small regional academic with around 7,000 students. And we have 2 library branches. Our primary branch is our Tahlequah campus, about an hour east of Tulsa, Oklahoma. I work at the Broken Arrow branch with Karl, actually, and we're just outside of Tulsa. We've got a little bit over half a million physical items, 26 total library employees, and we use OCLC's WMS for ILS. For our ILL snapshot, if you want to go to the next slide, we've been at Topasa Library since June of 2019. Prior to that, we were a self-hosted Iliad library. We have about 4 people that process ILL at any given time. At our main campus, we have 2 full-time staff, 1 primary borrowing and 1 for lending, although they're cross-trained and can handle anything. I handle most of the ILL here at our branch, as well as kind of oversee all of the ILL operations and workflows. And then we've also got faculty here at the Broken Arrow branch that can step in as needed and handle things for extended absences or whenever anything comes up. We don't have any dedicated ILL student workers, but we just assign them things as they come up to pull items or scan requests as needed. And then I pulled some fiscal year averages there. I tried to go back and average before COVID a little bit of what numbers we would typically see.
Great, and just to review a little bit, in case you want to see our panelists and their ILL operations at a glance, to see if you see yourself in your library and sort of their story and their situation. Here you can see their relative borrowing volume. So far this year in 2021, these are statistics through the end of July. And then also their lending volume of filled requests, not requests received, but actual filled requests. And then the percentage of requests they send out unmediated through automation and the ILL system that they use. So you can see there's a variety in terms of use of unmediated automation, which they will all talk about shortly. So before they start to tell us our stories about automation, let's review what we're actually talking about when we say automation. So when we talk about automation, today's panelists will be discussing their use of automation in ILL, and that specifically relates to automation set up in OCLC's Automated Request Manager, or ARM. ARM allows you to define both the match criteria about the requests that you want to automate, along with the actions that you want the system to perform. It's configured in OCLC service configuration, and it was formerly known as direct request. So if your library or someone at your library eons ago used direct request and set up profiles in that interface, they would have migrated here. So you can still see them today. So right now, automation's available here in ARM for actions on new borrowing requests. As your patrons submit requests, you can have the system do things like apply constant data and send the request to lenders that you define based on a custom holdings path, or just build the lender string for you and let you put it in review so that you can give it a check before it goes out. So all of this is helpful because it gets your requests filled more quickly. It gets them to lenders who are most likely to fill them and fill them fast. So that frees up staff time to focus on more complex needs, like those more challenging requests or other projects that you have in your library. Automated request managers also the only way to get smart lender strings. So why do we call them smart lender strings anyway? Well, it's because ARM has access to more data than your staff interfaces do. And it can process that data more quickly than you could ever do yourself if you were to look up information about potential lenders, even if you could look up all of the same information. So what kind of data are we talking about? Well, it's a lot of data. Data like each lender's turnaround time performance over the past year and more recently, and their consistency with turnaround time. Not only do smart lender strings know which lenders are fastest to respond to requests, they also account for which lenders get materials to the borrowing library the fastest, because it looks at the turnaround time from the time a lender receives a borrowing request to the time the borrowing library marks it received. So in other words, it takes into account shipping time as well when it's ranking those lenders by turnaround time order. Automation also considers each library's individual settings like deflections and license terms. It can see the local holdings records that the lender has for print serials and WorldCat knowledge base holdings for e-serials. And it can evaluate the capacity of hundreds of potential lenders to fill each request and pick the best ones. And it also has load balancing built in when it sends to lenders, and not just randomized load balancing either, because again, the amount of data OCLC has access to about the thousands of lenders on the World ILL network, smart lender strings also consider each lender's current workload. Based on their historical data about the number of requests each individual lender typically processes in a day and how many requests are typically in their lending queues, automation can avoid lenders whose current workload exceeds their average queue depth, which prevents any one super fast lender from becoming overwhelmed with lending requests. And this calculation is performed every hour, so it takes into effect the most current information possible. And of course, the ultimate goal of all of this is to gain faster turnaround times for all libraries on the network, even ones not using automation. So with that brief introduction about automation, that's pretty much all I have to tell you. Let's hear again from our panelists about their individual workflows. So we'll do a little bit of a round robin first and start with, why did you decide to use automation at your library? And we'll start with Laura.
Okay, so when I first started an interlibrary loan, we had a limit of 3 requests per patron. And the way that we monitored that was to actually go into each patron's record each time they requested anything. And to actually, once I determined that they already had 3 requests, then I would send them an email and say, no, I'm sorry, you have to wait to request. So that really felt counterproductive to be telling patrons no all the time. Could you go to the previous slide just before this one? I think.
Sorry,
I don't know what happened there. There you go. Thank you. So we decided to basically go to unlimited requesting, working with my manager, the collection services manager. And in order to do that, we really needed a way to process the requests more quickly. So I set up direct request eons ago, and it sped up the process of processing the requests. So then I was able to spend more time on actually like unpacking the materials as they came in and getting them out to customers. And we do say it's unlimited, but our patrons do have an account limit of 100 items checked out at once. And it's very rare that most of those are interlibrary loans. So yeah, the direct request or automated request manager now just allows me to kind of keep up with everything as we get things in. And go on to the next Okay.
Let's see. So Brandon, why do you use automation at your library?
Well, when we were on Iliad, the artist formerly known as Direct Request was very intimidating to us. And we weren't entirely sure how it worked. I think we thought everything had to be unmediated. And so it just kind of scared us away and we never used it. When we migrated to Tapasa, the implementation team said, hey, you should really check this out. You should really be using this. And so we had set up one or two that were mostly to just route anything to DocDel that we had. But we soon realized that there was more that could be done here. So we started out with 1 or 2 automations. Now we have 10, and I'm sure if you ask us a year from now, that number will be much higher. It saves us time just applying constant data, building lender strings. But as a Tapasa library, we use tags a lot. We are tagaholics. And so we use automation to auto tag requests based on certain match criteria within the request to kind of give attention or spotlight areas that we might usually overlook when we're going through stuff.
And how about you, Amy? You're in Iliad Library. You obviously figured out how to use it. Why did you decide to start using it?
I am so busy. My position is tenure track, and it's half reference. So I am pulled in lots of different directions. The position that this was before me was not tenure track. So I'm just busier than ever. And I needed automation, absolutely 100%. So I could have more time to do things that I needed to do. And also so my patrons would get things faster. You know, I was really feeling a lot of guilt about how long it was taking me sometimes to get to things. So I absolutely wanted them to get the best and quickest service possible.
Great. So next question, and I'll start with Laura again. What types of automation do you use at your library? What are you automating? Oh, you're on mute.
So we are right now using the automated request manager for automations. We have one set up for audiovisual materials and another one set up for books. So we just have the two. And we wanted to make sure we were flagging anything that was held by our institution to route to review if it looked like a duplicate request. And then if it didn't get held back for any of those 2 reasons, after that, it will choose to send the request to lenders if at least 2 lenders from my custom holdings path hold the item. And I have set those custom holding paths for only free lenders. And it does apply the constant data. And I've just used a basic constant data with $0 IFM to make sure that nothing is going out that might end up getting my library charged without me looking at it.
That's a really good point, and we might get to that in some of our myth debunking later, but you do have it set up so that you only have the system sent to free lenders and you have $0 in your max cost. So even if those free lenders suddenly decided to start charging, they wouldn't be able to charge you without at least sending you a conditional, right?
Right.
Great. How about you, Brandon?
Well, ours is the same way. We have 0 IFM and we use free lenders as well. Anything that touches automation, applies constant data, builds a lender string from our custom or selected holdings group if that meets the minimum number of lenders, or it routes it to document delivery if it's held by our library. And then I threw in a couple examples for how we do tagging. If a patron places a loan request and they say, I need this in 2 days, it will auto tag it with NBD for need by date so that we can kind of take a look at that request. And then another example was if there are any patron notes in the patron notes field, even if it's just thank you, it will auto tag it with see patron notes. And that way we can look at it to make sure. Sometimes they'll say, I want this edition, or they'll give a specific thing. And then on the next slide, I've got examples of what that actually looked like in Automation Manager on an ARM. So it's the first one there was for loans, the date, and then the actions it's performing. So it's going to DocDel, it's using our free loans, and then our loan constant data. And the second one's for copies for the patron notes. Very similar, except we're using an express group and then our copy constant data.
Great. How about you, Amy? What do you automate?
So everything that has an ISSN or OCLC number touches automation without me having to worry about it. And if it goes well, then it just goes through, and that's great. But I do have lots of safeguards set up, copyright, of course, patron notes. That's my number one. If they have a note, I want to see it. But I also take good advantage of ILLiad's routing rules to make sure I'm seeing things. Like I know a lot of patrons from the discovery layer, even though there's a URL usually right in the thing, will request dissertations, and they come through and as dissertation abstracts. And I do not want requests going out so all they get is an abstract when we usually have the dissertation available for them. So I have a routing rule set up in ILLiad. So anything that comes in with the title dissertation abstracts comes to me, so I can double check it and get them the correct item that they want.
Very cool. All right, what's your basic workflow in terms of how patrons place requests and how these things get in the system, and then what you do? I'll start with Laura.
Okay, so our patrons are able to use our catalog, and they will typically search our catalog first, and then if they don't find anything, they can select resources, and then they can choose to search WorldCat directly from our catalog using the same search that they had just done. And then once they find a WorldCat holding, they're allowed to place a hold from there. And our system, we use Polaris, and it will actually just kind of collect all of those requests. And then I have to manually upload all of the ILL requests from Polaris Sleep into WorldShare. Everything lands into the new for review queue. And I have to click on each one to send it to automation, which I've timed to take about 6 to 10 seconds per request. 47% of my requests go through automation, which saved me 136 staff hours last fiscal year versus spending 2 minutes searching for lenders for those requests.
That's some good data right there. Very cool. How about you, Brandon?
We have a pretty simple setup. We use OCLC's Discovery for our Discovery catalog layer. So we funnel most of the requests, or all the requests, through that. But we do have open URL linking through some databases like EBSCO and ProQuest. So if they find something that's not full text, they can click a request ILL button. It'll send them to the discovery form, and then go through to PASA through automation. Automation will take place on anything with the match criteria, OCN, ISBN, ISSN. So if it's not matching that, then they probably just manually typed in the request, and that's probably why it didn't match.
And then you can review those and update them. Yeah.
And
And
send
Amy,
it
I
back
would
to automation.
Yes, that's a very good thing. You can do what Laura does and manually route to automation. And Amy, I'm assuming your workflow is pretty similar to Brandon's in that your patrons discover things.
It is, yeah. Sometimes things kick back from automation, and so I check why, and it's usually like not the best OCLC record has come in through the system, and I 100% want those smart lender strings, so I like fix it and put it back into awaiting direct request sending. So that's the name of the queue that we put it in an ILLiad to send it to automation. Then it just whoop goes back, and then yay, happy day, I never see it again.
That's the best. So what has using automation allowed you to do? So Laura told us about the time that using automation freed up for her. What types of things, Laura, have you been able to do with those 136 hours?
136 hours, yes. A lot of that time, like I said, is spent unpacking and sending materials out. And I might have a slide for this too, if you put it in there.
Sorry.
Thank you. That's all right. I also use that time to improve OCLC holdings for my library. I found a really quick way to just use Collection Manager and copy the OCLC number. If OCLC thinks we hold something that our pack disagrees with, I can just create a collection, and then I email our tech services manager, and he'll delete all of our holdings for those. And I also take the time to, email the customers that haven't returned their items, or to email other libraries that haven't returned things, to invoice for unreturned items, create staff training for ILL related activities, so they know what to do when they get an interlibrary loan request or when they receive the items. And it also allowed me to present for an OCLC webinar and this conference. So.
And in the background, requests are going out to lenders as we speak from your patrons.
Absolutely, yes.
How about you, Brandon? What have you done with your time savings? Besides buy a giant boom mic.
Right, yes. I am now a professional podcaster. No, I mean, for us, we don't unmediate as much, but it saves us time on all the menial tasks of constant data and lender strings. And yeah, I love the smart lender strings. So it figures out all the deflections and sorts those out, and it filters by turnaround time and all. It does all that crazy stuff. So I mean, that stuff adds up. You know, I mean, I might be fixing a printer or something else. Who knows what my day will challenge me with if I'm not doing ILL.
Yes. And how about you, Amy?
Right. So it has freed me up to do a lot more scholarly activities, like working on publications and doing my reference duties as well, and presenting. But also one of the big benefits was because there has been positive feedback about how quickly things are coming through for patrons. And I put on my slide, we have 2 full-time LTA workers, but just not that long ago, one of them was half-time. And because ILL has been gaining so much traction and notice, that got changed to a full-time position. So like, wow, that's awesome.
Very cool. All right, let's move into debunking some myths about automation. So the first one that I have heard a lot is, oh, our library is too small, or we've got enough staff to do this. We don't need to worry about automation. We've got a low volume. It's not a really big deal. And I will say that because to low volume and small libraries, our presenters today probably don't look much like their operations. You may all think of yourselves as medium volume, but to truly low volume libraries, you guys are like, wow, you're doing a lot of work. So I actually did talk to an ILL staff member at Livingston County Library in Missouri, in Chillicothe, Missouri, and maybe Laura can tell us where that is. I'm not quite sure, but it is in a rural area. Their population serves about 15,000 residents. And Doris at this library, she sends out over half of her ILL requests to lenders completely unmediated. And you can see their request volume here. It's not super high. So far this year, they have sent out 139 borrowing requests and they filled 132 lending requests. We looked at her turnaround time compared to what's seen in the rest of her state among libraries that don't use automation. And she's getting her loans in 2 full days faster than other libraries in her state who don't use automation. And I told her that, and she didn't even know it. And she was super excited and told her director about it. And the director really gave her a big pat on the back and said, you're providing a great service to our users and getting them things that we wouldn't be able to purchase. And so you can see a quote from her here. And that's why she does what she does. And that's why she automates, because she can get these materials that her patrons want quickly. And she's got the time to do it with their small staff that way. But does anyone else, I think, Brandon, you wanted to weigh in on this too.
Yeah, I thought this was a great example, and this is all loans too. I think, you know, copies could have a bigger impact because it's digital, so you don't have that physical mailing aspect to it. But yeah, it's not about volume. It's, I mean, really about patron service here. And if we can fill items for patrons faster, then that's a great thing. And then it has the added benefit of making our lives easier, just kind of the icing on the cake, so we can focus on other things that might be escaping our attention. So that's kind of my take on that.
Great. I'll move on to the next one, which is the high touch service. So it's really important to a lot of people who work in ILL, and they take a lot of pride in the high touch service and the relationships that they build with their users, especially their high volume users. So there's a worry that automation might take some of that high touch experience away. And also there's a concern of, well, how will I even know what's happening to all of my requests if I were to automate them? Amy, I think you had something to say about this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say automation can be highly customizable. You can do as much or as little of it as you want, whatever you find to be most helpful. Personally, I would love it if I never even saw the requests at all. And a lot of that is due to, at some point, you sort of have to trust that the lenders that you're appealing to are going to provide you with the quality service that you would provide to them. So, but you know, if you want to make sure every scan that comes in looks perfect before you send it on to your patron, you can adjust and wait and send it on to them. You know, it's really up to you, especially with Iliad. It's hugely customizable, the way that you can change how things are coming into you and how things are going out, like I did with the dissertations, because I know my patrons may not always make the best choices, and you're aware of the trends and patterns with your own patrons and can make those sorts of choices. So if you're concerned about undergrads requesting foreign language items that they don't really understand, that they don't need, you know, maybe you can turn off automations for undergrads and just have things go out for faculty, or and that's of course speaking from an academic library perspective, but yeah, so there are good options, and you can use what you need.
Great. And Laura, I think you've got the public library perspective on this one. What do you think?
Well, I mean, I would argue that most of your patrons don't even know how much you're looking at that request anyway. You know, they will notice if they get an item 2 or 3 days faster, but they're not going to notice that you took the time to look at that request and to make sure that it was on the best record and then to send it out. So using the automation, really from the patron perspective, they're only going to notice that they're getting their items faster. And as far as needing to know what's happening to your requests, you can always look them up, or at least I do in WorldShare at any time. If they're a patron, you know, wants to know where their item is, I just look up and see whether it's in transit yet, and you know, let them know about how much longer we can expect that item to be in.
Yep, all very true. And I'll also point out that in WorldShare, you can see the request history, in Iliad too. You can see the request history, including what happened with automation. And if you set up unmediated automations, your requests will go into an automation produce queue, so you can actually see them if you want. You can see what's happening all through the process, like Laura said. Okay, another myth. So I think we sort of started to touch on this a little bit, but my patrons, what if they request the wrong thing? You know, especially you're like undergrads, I don't trust them. They're just gonna look at the first page of results and pick the first thing that pops up. What if that's something that's only held by 2 libraries in the other side of the world? I think I need to check everything first. Or what if they request something that we'll never borrow? Like, we don't lend AV and we won't borrow AV, and they requested AV, or we won't request an ebook, but that's what they requested. Wouldn't automation just send those out to lenders? Isn't that a problem? Amy?
Sorry, I did touch on that quite a bit already.
That's okay.
So you can customize a lot. And also, I think a really important point is having good custom holdings in place, because that will ensure, you know, that you're requesting from, you're not spending a lot of money if you don't want to, you know, you're using resources that are faster and not sending you things. Like if you're concerned about the AV thing, you can have custom holders in place that, you know, would or would not send AV. So again, yeah, that customization is there both within your custom holdings and within the automations that you set up yourself.
How about you, Laura? Do you ever do anything to address this?
Well, you know, like I said, only 47% of my requests go through automation. So 53% are still coming back for me to review. It's not like everything, you know, just goes out to lenders immediately. And I do have my automations set up to only allow certain formats to go through unmediated. So anything that deviates from, you know, either just the books or the AV selections that I've allowed is going to get kicked back. And then I can spend my time reviewing the ones that get kicked back instead of every single request.
And that's let you have unlimited requesting for your patrons too, which probably makes them very happy.
Yes.
And you probably spend less time answering complaints about why can't we have more things. All good news. And our last myth is, the requests will be out of control if I turn this on. People will just request and never stop. And what am I supposed to do about that? What there's just going to be too many requests flying through the universe. Brandon, what do you think about this one?
I think you'll do nothing because the patrons don't know you have automation turned on. So patron behavior shouldn't change based on something that they don't know exists. Maybe the concern here is the patrons that are already requesting a lot, but you can, automation request manager has the flexibility where if you've got faculty members that are always requesting a ton of stuff, you can do stuff for undergrad and grad or other, you can do stuff based on patron type or department or all kinds of data. So you can mediate certain things, unmediate others if you're super worried about it. But I mean, we also have, I mean, DePasa has a request limit you can set if you need to. We don't have that set up. One of the other things that I've been working in this business long enough, I know the problematic patrons. I know when they place a request that it's going to be difficult or they're going to replace a lot of them and that sort of thing. But I don't think it's a worry because they're either going to do it or they're not, whether you're automating it. So yeah.
Great. And how about you, Laura?
When we needed to, we were able to use the Polaris ILS to place limitations on patron requests, which we did do during the whole year of COVID, mostly because patrons were having to get things through the drive-through, and it was rather difficult for our branch staff to handle that. You know, really, I don't see the problem being with automation. Like Brandon said, they don't know it's there. It's when you go to unlimited requests that you'll start seeing, you know, a huge uptick in requests. And then, you know, they do eventually slow down though, after they've gotten through their list of everything they wanted to see, they start to drop off a little bit. So.
Great. What about patron education about ILL? Does this ever come into play?
It does, and usually I have to educate the branch staff first, and then they have to be able to educate the patrons on how to place better requests, which will hopefully end up with more of them going through automation, and also just kind of letting them know, you know, we're not going to request like vinyl LP records. We're not going to request any kind of robotics kits from other libraries, and, you know, the types of things that we don't want going out. So, you know, once the patrons are educated better, they do tend to self-select what they will place a request for.
Great. Okay, since we are coming to the end, I will go to our future hopes for automation. If you each want to weigh in with something that you're hoping for in the future, I'll start with Amy.
Yeah, something I would like to see is greater customability when searching within the policies directory. I'd like to be able to cross-reference and build groups and strings that way. So I'd like to be able to see or like filter out people who deflect certain things. Yeah, that's what I would like.
And we hope that we can do that sometime with our concept of dynamic groups, which will let users define search criteria that they want to use to create a group and then have those groups being updated automatically as libraries change their policies. So that is a great idea. And I know a lot of people would love it if the policies directory is a little bit more flexible and easier to use. How about you, Brandon?
I would really love to see lending automation to perform certain actions based on if items are located at different branches or apply constant data or something like that.
And you probably won't be surprised to hear that that is coming in next summer, 2022. We're hoping to launch lending automation where you'll be able to do things like match on who's requesting from you, if they're a custom holdings group that you've set up or a profiled group, what's being requested in terms of the format, or if it's a copy or a loan, and then you'll be able to decide which constant data record to apply to it. So WorldShare ILL, DePasa, ILLiad libraries can all do all of those things. DePasa libraries will additionally be able to match on what Brandon was talking about, where the requested item is held at a branch location, and auto tag that request, as well as auto tagging the request for other reasons. How about you, Laura? Do you have any automation hopes for the future?
I'm also looking forward to getting the automation for lending. And one thing I'm really looking forward to, since we are a reciprocal lender, we want to make sure that if our borrowing libraries would charge us for a loan, that we can charge them, but it's pretty time intensive to make sure that we're catching all of those and putting the correct amounts in IFM. So I'm hoping that someday lending automation will be able to do a lot of that work for us.
And you probably already have custom holdings groups set up to know what to charge
Yes.
people. So yes, you've done the hard work already. So then lending automation can look at those custom holding groups and decide which constant data record and which charge to apply. So all very cool things that should be coming. And we would love to hear feedback from the audience. It looks like there's probably a bunch of stuff in chat. I can only see the number right now. And if you have your own automation success story, we want to hear that too. We also have a discussion thread in EventMobi if you want to post there and talk to others about it. I should probably pass this over to Karl so we can get to the important work of the secret passcode for this session.
Absolutely. So the slide for our door prize game should be coming up in just a second here. As you have learned by now, each session has a state or national park along with a clue, and this will be what will be entered in the door prize game under submit a passcode. This park has been an active volcano for almost 700,000 years. That is Hawaii Volcanoes National Park, and I'm fairly certain that the apostrophe is required when you type that in. And I'm going to go ahead and throw that into the chat as well. If I can find it, because once I started sharing, of course, everything went a different place. So while I'm pasting here, we will start with the short question. How much does it cost to set up automation?
It costs $0 to set up automation because it's included in your existing WorldShare ILL, Iliad, Tapasa subscription. And if you need help with it, we'll even help you with it for free. And Atlas will even help you with it for free if you're an Iliad library. We've worked with them pretty closely, and we've got some good recommendations there.
Okay. Is OCLC discussing making the pickup location field an actionable field in ARMs? Patron department can be used in automations, but it is pickup location that prints in WorldShare ILL printouts.
Yes, we do have a plan to add that for borrowing automation, but we want to launch lending automation first, and then we'll go back and probably add a few things to borrowing automation. And that one is one of the things that's on our radar.
Sorry, we're getting messages that the passcode isn't working. I will try and fix that. How does catching duplicates work? Would duplicate requests have notes in the history that there's duplicate even if you aren't using ARMs?
Duplicate flagging would only work in ARM if you turn that on, but it only catches duplicates that are submitted by the same user within just a few seconds of each other. So it's not great duplicate checking. Iliad, I know, does a lot better at that. And so in Iliad, if you're an Iliad user, you can set up rules on the Iliad side to catch duplicates before they even get sent to ARM. I don't know if Amy does that or not.
I don't think I have that as a routing rule, but now I'm gonna.
Are you able to catch textbook requests? We don't allow patrons to request textbooks via ILL.
There's no real set way to catch just textbooks, but what I have heard from users who are worried about that and use automation is they set up their automation to only send out requests that were published at least maybe 2 years ago, because a lot of times the textbooks they're looking for are things that they need the newest edition that was published in the last year. So then it wouldn't match on that. I don't know if Brandon or Amy have any other advice.
I was gonna say, I have that set up the 2-year rule for students, but not for faculty, because if they need a textbook, then it's for other purposes than textbooking.
Yeah, we're trying to tag it whenever it's within 1 or 2 years.
And then you can go back and look and see if it's a textbook
Right.
or not.
If it's a faculty member, we're going to process it. So yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, will automation keep track of Contu guidelines?
Yes, it will. I know on the Iliad side, you can set something up to do it on that side, but we'll do it for Tapasa because Tapasa's got a copyright module. So Tapasa can be set up so that it will stop the 5th request for the same title within either the last 5 or 6 years. You can set up which one you define. It'll automatically stop those requests for review if you choose to use it that way. WorldShare ILL though, Not really for copies, no.
All right, got a couple more questions. While we're doing that, I am going to show the event Mobi page for this session, just to remind you that all of the slides are available in PDF form if you want to download those. The recording, of course, will be available after, once we get the captions taken care of, and there is a post-session survey there for you to fill out. I'm going to go ahead and read a few more questions since we are over time. So just letting everyone know. And I know that Miriam wants everyone in the closing session. So let's see, many librarians are still not lending or have changed their days to respond. Have you reviewed all our custom holdings?
Has OCLC reviewed your custom holdings? No, that would be for individual libraries to review, since each individual library sets up their custom holdings. In terms of who's lending and who's not, that's controlled by each library through the policies directory. We did just recently, or are about to, send out sort of back to school type of email to remind ILL staff to check their settings in the policies directory. So if they did have those COVID settings in place where they were deflecting all loan requests, or they had changed their days to respond for loans to 16 or 20, to remember to change those back if they're lending normally. And we also, of course, still have the ACOVE, BCOVE, and CGOVE groups that you can use. CGOVE means libraries who are lending physical materials. ACOVE is libraries who will supply electronic documents, and BCOVE is will supply ebooks.
All right, so I'm being given the notice that we do need to shut it down so that the next session can begin. I will give one last question, which is, if I want to set up automations, where do I start?
We would recommend just a very basic automation, one for loans, one for copies, to match on all copies, send to lenders in a custom holdings path you define, and apply a constant data record. If you need help, you can go to support.oclc.org, send them an email. Anyone there would be happy to help you, set up a WebEx with you, and walk you through the whole process. And if you're an Iliad library, we can help with that too.
Great. Yeah, and Alina posted a link to an OCLC item on recommended basic automations. So that might be
perfect
to whoever asked that question as well. Thank you all so much. I will see you in the closing session. And thank you so much for our panelists. This was a great presentation, and I really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.